student teaching. They have a voluntary afternoon section that are now, this is down in Texas, but they've been working all day for a long
I
time.
know. There's a comment in here about how everybody else has it. Why the heck don't we? Anyway, comments are pretty interesting.
Our sister school.
It's good for Montana.
Good evening. Welcome everyone. This is the forum on full day kindergarten in Missoula. We're really pleased that you could all come and join us. This forum is sponsored by the Healthy Start Council, which is part of the Missoula Forum for Children and Youth. And Susan Barmeyer, who is sitting in the audience, not in the glare of the lights, is the one who's put this together. Thank you, Susan. The purpose of this forum is very simple. It's a community conversation on full day kindergarten. Nothing more, nothing less. And what Susan and her colleagues have done is assembled a group of people who know a lot about different aspects of that conversation. And so what we've asked them to do is give us 7 minutes apiece just to really start our conversation about the different aspects of full day kindergarten that they know about. And you'll hear a lot of different perspectives as they go through their spiels. We've asked them to just limit their talks to 7 minutes to get us started in a conversation. So once they're all through, we'll open up the floor for conversation, questions, comments, and I think the panel is invited to participate in that to the same extent as the audience. We want to thank MCAT for filming this and putting it on public access television. It's not quite like being at ESPN at the game, but we'll still enjoy it. So let me introduce our panelists tonight. I'm just going to go down the row so you'll know who's sitting here. Our first is Linda McCulloch. She's from the Office of Public Instruction, a public figure we all know. Shannon Guilfoyle. She's at the Co-Teach Preschool at the University of Montana. Thanks for coming, Shannon. Thank you. Ann Garfinkel, Early Childhood Special Education, also at University of Montana. Kathy Newman. That's Susan Duffy. That's not Kathy Newman. Susan Duffy. She is a parent, and she's the Kindergarten Transition Coordinator for Head Start. Next to her is Kathy Newman, the full-day kindergarten teacher at St. Joseph's Elementary School. Mike Delancey is next. Mike runs a wonderful child care in Missoula called Angel Child Care, and he's the president of the Missoula Association for the Education of Young Children. Roger Wright is visiting us from Great Falls, giving us a child care perspective from Great Falls, where he runs a child care. And finally, Karen Allen, the well-known principal of Lewis and Clark Elementary School. So with that, we're just kind of going to go down the line here. Our timer is Cheryl. What is the indication that we're supposed to cut our comments short, Cheryl?
1 minute.
Okay.
Stop.
How's that sound? Is that clear to everybody? Yeah. And I think there's no huge consequences other than displeasure of the whole crowd if you go on. So with that, I'm going to start things off with you, Linda.
Oh, thank you. Linda McCullough, State Superintendent of Public Instruction, and have had a long time interest in early childhood education. Quite naturally, before becoming state superintendent, I spent 20 years as an elementary school teacher and a kindergarten through 8th grade librarian. So I come by my love of early childhood by a very honest nature, and frankly was ready to introduce a full-day kindergarten bill in the last legislative session in 2003. But as you probably will remember and grimace, we had such a budget deficit during that session that to introduce anything new into the equation, I think, put at jeopardy basic funding for education. So we decided at that time to hold off on the full-day kindergarten proposal and to bring it up this time. In Montana, we've never really had the public discussion about full-day kindergarten. And so, frankly, my interest is making sure that we, as a public and also as a legislature who would be the entity to appropriate the money, that we have this discussion on a public and official basis. At this point right now, kindergarten in Montana is a half-time kindergarten, which means that the state funds it at half-time. So we do have a few school districts, schools around the state that do offer full day. And by full day kindergarten, I mean all day Monday, all day Tuesday, all day every day of the week. There's sometimes confusion because there are some school districts that have full day kindergarten, and that's like full day Monday, full day Wednesday, and half a day on Tuesday or Friday, so that it still equals half time. So the school districts that offer full-day kindergarten right now, all 5 days a week, all day, are still only reimbursed by the state for half-time. So that's kind of where we are right now. And we kind of have to look back at 50 years ago when kindergarten really got started, and that's kind of a sore point with me because I'm just about ready to turn 50. So whenever I talk about something 50 years ago, I take it very personally. But it was at kind of a different time because at that time there was, pretty much one parent, mom, was at home with the student, and many times there were some educational activities going on at home. So it was a different time when we started with kindergarten. Today in the United States, we know that 98% of all children in the United States attend at least half-day kindergarten, and 60% of all kindergarten students in the country attend full-day, all-the-time kindergarten. And so we're not on the cutting edge at talking about full-day kindergarten in Montana. Let me just talk about, I've got probably about 70 minutes worth of notes here, but let's talk just a little bit about the benefits about full-time kindergarten research. And there's been quite a bit of research in the last number of years on kindergarten and early childhood development and education. And we know that there's a greater progress during the child, not only in kindergarten, but in those years afterwards and so on, in literacy, math, and general learning skills. We know that there's a significant social and emotional development. Full-day kindergarten also relates to less grade retentions and less special education placements. So when you talk to legislators about that, you not only talk about the educational benefits, but there's perhaps some cost savings in having less grade retentions and less special education placements. We know from a number of research there's higher scores on achievement tests, reduced behavioral problems. That's one that teachers like to talk about quite a lot. Research is also in the last number of years, and this, you may think this kind of sounds funny at first, but research has shown that there is no detrimental effect to attending full-day kindergarten. And that has been something that was discussed, for years about thinking that there would be a detrimental effect on children to attend all day. The children who frequently benefit the most from full-day kindergarten are those poor and minority students. And, and I think that that's one of the things that points to our success in Montana for our Head Start programs. I think there's a tie-in in there too. Research has also showed that students adjust to the longer school days without any major difficulties. Many more I could talk to you about. But some other things, and these are the things we talk to legislators about. There's a cost saving also of not having those school bus runs in the middle of the school day. So, these may seem like cursory things to most of us, but they're very important to the people who actually allocate the funds. Some economic benefits of full-time kindergarten. There's quite a few of those. Research has showed the significantly higher monthly earnings at age 27. The research mostly only goes to about the age 27. Significantly higher percentage of home ownership among students who've had a very quality early childhood education, a significant higher level of schooling completed, and a significantly lower percentage receiving social services, and significantly fewer arrests by the age 27. Now, probably obvious to all of us, the obstacle, this sounds like such a great thing, but the obstacles, of course, are obvious. Money and attitude. I was told when we talked about the last year or so about full-day kindergarten, was told that it was, not necessarily, this is a legislator, not necessarily a bad idea, but it was a utopian idea of full-day kindergarten. And we know from 60% of kids in the United States already attending full-day kindergarten that it probably is not cutting-edge stuff we're talking about. But let's get right down to the bill that we have in, the proposal that we have in. Now, we know that there are school districts, for a variety of reasons, who will not have the classrooms available to have full-time kindergarten. We know that they may not be able to have staff available. So what we have done is made full-day kindergarten an optional thing that a school district can offer if they are able to offer it. It will still be optional among parents. Parents can choose to send their children to full-day kindergarten or not, so it's still very optional. It's just if the school district does offer full-day kindergarten, that the school district is then paid for a full-time student, like we do for first grade, second grade, and so on. And so that would be the proposal. Interestingly enough, we're in the third year of full-day kindergarten in Great Falls, and theirs has also been optional for parents. And at this time in Great Falls, there are only 2 students that choose not to go to full-day kindergarten. So it's become a very popular thing in Great Falls, and has actually, we took a yellow school bus tour to visit the programs there, and in fact, we're planning right now to take a yellow school bus tour of legislators in January when they come to the session, so they can actually go and visit the programs there. But it's interesting to be able to talk not only to the kindergarten teachers and to watch the program, but then to carry it on and talk to I haven't missed the sign, have I? Okay, good. I thought I was kidding about that time. But to be able to talk to the first, the first grade teachers and the second grade teachers, to talk about, how both had to adjust their curriculums in their classroom because of the learning that was taking place in full-day kindergartens. And so we think that this is a conversation that's certainly due in Montana and probably past its time. And so I just want to thank everyone here on the panel, and thanks for putting this together so that we have the opportunity to talk as a state about full-day kindergarten and the benefits of early childhood education. Thank you.
Thank you, Linda. Next speaker is Shannon Guilfoyle, and again, she's at Co-Teach Preschool at U of M.
Thank you. I'm going to be talking about the research that surrounds full-day kindergarten, and because it is research, I need to kind of just dive in and talk about it. So I have a lot that I want to share, and I'll try to talk slowly, but let me know if I'm talking too quickly. Changing economic and social conditions has caused many school districts to modify kindergarten programming. Teachers, parents, administrators, and school boards are challenged with meeting the physical, social, and cognitive needs of 5-year-olds amid the realities of diminishing fiscal resources. These pragmatic factors have led educators to seek empirical evidence to guide kindergarten decision-making. In 2002, Jennifer Railsbeck and Corey Brewster summarized the available research and the following available research on full-day kindergarten, and the following is the summary on what they found while doing their literature review. Unfortunately, drawing conclusions from the existing research on full-day kindergarten is not easy, in part because kindergarten practices and student populations vary so widely from school to school. Many of the benefits associated with full-day kindergarten remain anecdotal, or are based on single district studies that failed to control for family income level, mobility, parents' level of education, or other factors that may affect student performance, regardless of the kindergarten schedule. Isolating the effects of extra class time involvement has also proven to be difficult. Let me start all over. Isolating the effects of extra class time from factors such as class size, teaching methodology, teacher experience, and parent involvement has also proven to be difficult. A change in curriculum alone when moving from half-day to full-day schedule may be responsible for the differences in academic achievement that children exhibit. Another problem with the available research on full-day kindergarten is that there have been few studies in which children have been assigned randomly to full or half-day programs being studied. Further complicating the issue, there has been limited and sometimes conflicting research into the effectiveness of full-day kindergarten. Given the significant differences between full-day kindergarten programs around the country, it is difficult to compare findings across studies, much less isolate the effects of curricula or teaching methods from the number of hours kindergarten students spend in class. Skeptics characterize full-day kindergarten as a good illustration of how a social problem, in this case, increased child care needs, gets misinterpreted and given an educational solution. The consequences of this is that educators have raised their expectations for entering first graders and have become increasingly willing to retain less prepared children in kindergarten. Critics also argue that curriculum and instruction have much more to do with the quality of a child's kindergarten experience than the length of the school day itself. Still, researchers say that for kindergartners from a home already rich in educational experiences, the kindergarten schedule is not going to make much of a difference. On top of that, there is not current strong evidence that the academic achievement of full-day kindergarten persists beyond first grade for all students. In contrast, further examination of the research yields more positive aspects of full-day kindergarten. Students participating in full-day kindergarten, and much of this is things that I'll cover that Linda had mentioned previously. Students participating in full-day kindergarten consistently progress further academically during the kindergarten year as assessed by its achievement tests than students in either half-day or alternate day programs. There is tentative evidence that full-day kindergarten has stronger, longer-lasting academic benefits for children from low-income families or others with fewer educational resources prior to entering kindergarten. At this time, there is no evidence for detrimental effects of full-day kindergarten. The full-day curriculum, if developmentally appropriate, does not seem to overly stress or pressure kindergarten children. Kindergarten teachers and parents strongly value the increased flexibility and opportunities to communicate and individualize instruction for children offered by the full-day schedule. Initial costs, as mentioned before, can be offset by eliminating the need to provide buses and crossing guards during midday. Full-day kindergarten may also reduce costs due to fewer grade retentions and fewer remedial and special education referrals. For example, in 2002, a study of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania's kindergarten programs found that lowered retention rates for graduates of Philadelphia's full-day classes shaved close to 19% off the cost of providing them, which in 1999 came to about $2 million for every 1,000 kindergarten students. In addition to the research findings, many parents and practitioners have attributed several benefits to the full-day kindergarten program. As we know, research has told us time and again that lack of school readiness skills has been strongly linked to family income in several recent studies. In general, lower-income children have fewer books, fewer early learning experiences, and other resources that support emergent literacy than upper-income children have. Children from lower-income families who are also English language learners are even at greater risk. For these less prepared students, many teachers argue half-day kindergarten simply does not provide enough time to meet kindergarten outcomes and prepare them for first grade. Full-day kindergarten is viewed as a way not only to help level the playing field for children with limited skills, but to reduce the chances of being retained, which is a practice that is strongly opposed by early childhood experts, or at least should be. Additional benefits for students include more time and opportunity to play with language, as well as to explore subjects in more depth, a more flexible, individualized learning environment, and more individual and small group interaction with a teacher than is possible in most half-day classrooms. In addition to that, other research has found that full-day kindergartners exhibit more independent learning, classroom involvement, productivity and work with peers, and reflectiveness than half-day kindergartners. They are also more likely to approach the teacher and express less withdrawal, anger, shyness, and blaming behavior than other half-day kindergartners. Benefits for parents include the potential of lower child care costs, the opportunity for lower-income families to enroll their children in higher quality education programs that might otherwise be affordable in the private market, and less difficulty scheduling childcare and transportation. Increased opportunities to get involved in their child's classroom, as well as to communicate with their teacher. Benefits for teachers include reduced ratio of transition time to learning time, more time to spend with students individually and in small groups, more time to get to know and communicate with parents, more time to assess students and individualize instruction to their needs and interests, and fewer total students, 20 to 25 per year as compared to 40 to 50 per year. In conclusion, overall, the data suggests that full-day kindergarten does benefit children both academically and socially. And it is my professional opinion that in considering this, we need to be sure that kindergarten, a full-day kindergarten initiative is based upon academic needs of children and not child care initiatives. Thank you.
Thank you, Shannon. And now we have our I was going to say Art, I'm sorry, Ann Garfinkel.
Simon too.
Probably happened a few times to you. And she's also at University of Montana in early childhood special ed.
I want to thank the Healthy Start Council for organizing this and providing this opportunity for me. And my area of interest is early childhood special ed, but I'm actually in the curriculum and instruction department in the School of Ed as an associate professor of special education. Just a technicality, but there you have it. I'm pretty new to Montana. This is the start of my second academic year, so I'm really happy to get to meet some of you all. Previously, I held faculty appointments at Vanderbilt University and the University of North Carolina in Chapel Hill, so I'm glad to be in the Northwest. Before that, I had 10 years of teaching experience with young children with and without disabilities, so I have the classroom perspective and the academic perspective. I was asked to talk about the developmental appropriateness of full-day kindergarten. In order to do that, I want to place the discussion in a larger context. And then I want to talk about what that word means, because it gets kicked around a lot, but I think we have limited understanding about what development really is. And then finally, I want to shift the topic to be, is kindergarten developmentally appropriate, to how do we make kindergartens developmentally appropriate? So in terms of the context, there's a historic context, there's a cross-cultural context, and then there's a local or contemporary context. In terms of, I'm still Ann.
Madeline will get that finished. She's been doing that, so.
In terms of the historic context, in this country, prior to World War II, kindergartens, when they existed, were full day. It wasn't until the baby boom hit and there became a drain on resources with the increased population that kindergarten was cut generally to be a half-day experience for children. In terms of cross-cultural information, many countries in Europe and Asia and elsewhere have full-day kindergartens. Specifically, if we look at the largest school organization in the world, which is in China, they run a full-day kindergarten. And when they say full-day in China, they mean from 7 a.m. to 5 p.m., not what we consider full-day here, which is a truncated amount of time. And contemporarily or locally, we know that in the state of Montana, 72% of children under the age of 6 live in families where either both parents work outside the home or they live in a single-parent household where that parent works out the home. So a large percentage of that 72% is already experiencing a lot of time receiving care and education outside of the home context. Similarly, if we look at all children, if we look at the population of children with autism in particular, current recommended practices from the National Research Council recommend at least 20 hours a week of service, and several recommendations recommend up to 40 hours a week. This is for children aged 2 through 5 or 8. And we know, like in Great Falls, that some local schools offer a full-day program. So what we know from this context is that kids can certainly be in full-day environments, be full day away from their home. But just because kids can do it doesn't mean that it provides a location or a context for ultimate or optimal development. So just because you can do something, just because something can happen, doesn't mean it's the best thing we should do. And I think the question around, is kindergarten developmentally appropriate, begs the question of whether it's an optimal place for children to be, not whether it's a tolerable place for children to be. So in order to really understand if full-day kindergarten is developmentally appropriate, we have to understand what development means, or what we're talking about when we talk about developmentally appropriate. So there's a lot of theory in developmental psychology about what development is for young kids. There's several major theories, several are older. So there's the stage theory of development, that's a kind of a Piagetian perspective that says that kids use some accommodation and assimilation to learn, and they go through different stages of learning. There's some information processing theories where development's thought to be an interaction between what the information kids take in and processing that. There's the social learning theory, which the thinker that's associated with that would be Vygotsky, where he really thinks about the social tools being like language and your interaction with people that have the social tools from your society interacting with you and creating learning and development. There's a maturational stance, which says that basically as time goes, you gain skills with more sophistication. There's some newer theories that are based on the brain and behavior relationships, so something that takes into consideration the growing of your brain and your neurology. And then the newest kind of psychological theory is called the theory theory. And that's, it's actually a Northwest theory. It was developed by a professor at the University of Washington and his colleague at Cal Berkeley. But the theory kind of has this idea that a child is a scientist, or a scientist in the crib. And so what they're doing is forming hypotheses and testing them, refining them and forming more hypotheses. So there's multiple theories. These are just kind of the top hits. There's other theories as well. But when you look across all these theories, and that's what they all are, is just theories, there's data about development, and they fit each of the theories, which makes it a little hard to think about, and they each have merits. But when you think about the theories overall, what's interesting to note is that they all agree that development is the result of the child interacting with the environment. They posit different mechanisms, but they all agree that the child's interacting with the environment. And when we say environment, we mean the social and the physical aspects of the environment, so manipulating objects as well as interactions with people. Now, interestingly, some of the most recent studies on genetics, especially those done on twins, kind of support this fact. The most recent studies on genetics in terms of intelligence support that 50% of our intelligence comes from genetics and 50% comes from the environment. So the question isn't anymore environment, nature, or nurture. The question is how much of when what influences. So we know it's both. In addition, all of these theories of development recognize that there's huge variability within and across children. So development of young children is really characterized by discontinuity, not unity. That is that some kids have some skills at some age and not skills at other ages, and we still consider that to be typically developing. So you think about the onset of speech or the onset of mobility. They come at different times. And it's not parallel across kids. So what we think about when we bring all this information about development together is development's a moving target. It's a moving target for kids who are the same age, and it's a moving target for an individual kid, right? Their development in their motor domain can be very different than their development in their language domain. It's not smooth or parallel. And in fact, when you see growth in one area, you often see some plateaus in other areas. So you have to ask, well, how can we then capture this to make something developmentally appropriate for it? That's why I then think we should flip the question and say, let's not ask if it's developmentally appropriate for kids. Let's ask, how can we take kindergartens and make them developmentally appropriate for the kids who are there? So I think to do that, you have to understand a couple things. One is that kindergarten is a unique educational experience. It's different than preschool, it's different than childcare, and it's certainly different than first grade. And it's really different than what I teach now. Those are kids. We also want to remember that neither extreme is going to work. So if you can't have a kindergarten where the teaching pedagogy is teacher-directed, didactic, and heavily academic. Conversely, you can't have a teaching pedagogy that's follow the child's lead and not having the adult provide any instruction or direction. What we want instead is a balanced approach, and we want to use the recommendations that we already know work for young kids, the recommendations that come out of the National Association for the Education of Young Children and the Division of Early Childhood. These would include using an activity-based approach or a play-based approach to provide balance where teachers choose some activities and students choose some activities, where there's exploration time and passive learning time, where there's gross motor time and fine motor time, when there's loud activities and quiet activities. And so I think that's the question to have, because as Shannon talked about, there was not enough specificity to know if it's all good or all bad. So thank you.
Thank you, Anne. Fascinating. We're going to move to Susan Duffy, a parent and the kindergarten transition coordinator at Head Start.
I'm delighted to hear the research because I'm going to drag you back to family realities. First, I'd like to say that my mother and a woman named Harriet Lyme taught the first kindergarten in Missoula. This was, I don't know if it was in the fall of 43 or 44 that it got started. And it was at the university. And she said the only time she met the president of the university is when one of her children climbed a tree in front of his office, and she had to go up after him and get him down, and the president was peering out and looking at her. I was not born yet. By the time I was born, they were back in Ohio. And I went to a full-day kindergarten. This is in 1950. I turned 60 next year. This is in 1950. And my mother was my teacher. And I recall that it was a great experience, and that some children had to nap in the afternoon, and some of us didn't. So I just wanted to say that. I was curious what parents around Missoula would say about a full-day kindergarten. My experience, my youngest is 16, and my experience is that nobody forgets the kindergarten year, especially the mom, because you spend your days schlepping the kid back and forth, and it's very difficult if you work. When I was young, my mother was one of the very few women I knew who worked. Now there are very few women who do not. But kindergarten really hasn't moved on a lot in the past 50 years. Karen Allen was kind enough to let us put this survey out at her school during the parent-teacher conferences. About 70 families filled them out there. I kind of test drove it on my colleagues at Head Start, not on the parents, but on the Head Start staff. When I first put the survey together and went around and said, did I leave anything out? What else should I have asked? A couple of us went to Washington Middle School during their parent-teacher conference days, and would kind of buttonhole people on their way in and give them the really quick spiel and hand them the sheet of paper and say, please drop it in this box on your way out. And we got 220 responses, so we felt good. The reason we went to Washington Middle School was because we didn't have enough people to do this everywhere. And I figured that middle school people, if you remembered it that much later, it was something that really made an impression on you. And that Washington Middle School itself kind of took in the biggest, covered the widest geographical area of families in Missoula, and also probably the greatest diversity in terms of socioeconomic things. So that's why we went to Washington Middle School. The results were pretty similar in all three places. Essentially, 2/3 to 3/4 of all parents said they wished that they had had a full-day option when their child was in kindergarten. 1/4 to 1/3 did not need it. And the people who said they did not need it tended to be quite firm about it. It seemed more, in many ways, an ideological response to the question. We got many, many comments. And I have a couple extra copies over here if you can pick them up on your way out. I thought I'd just share a few of the comments with you. One comment, many people said, gee, we had full-day kindergarten because they came from other places. A typical comment, I think, a family who had been in Baltimore said, we had it, we loved it, we can't imagine not having it. Some commented on why they thought full day would be good for children. And I think the comment that wraps it up the best is, the present system does not serve kindergarten-age students effectively. They are capable of learning much more. They deserve more instructional time. Another comment, and several people brought this up, and I hadn't considered this, is a person said, I think a full day would not be as hectic for our child in kindergarten. Because it is hectic when we're rushing them from place to place. The typical comment on why full day would not be good for children is more than half a day is too much. There's two comments one comment that typifies what I grouped under why full day would be good for parents. One parent said, "I have 3 children, so I spent 3 years of dealing with the craziness of the way kindergarten's been set up for so long. It was so difficult." The most poignant comment I had, however, "I stayed in a really bad marriage 18 months longer than I wanted to because I could not afford to leave until both my kids were in school full time." It really touches families' lives. One last comment I'd like to read to you didn't fit into another category. And they said, "Most children are in preschool 30 to 50 hours a week from a very young age. Economic pressures create lousy situations for working parents with young children. We don't have the freedom and resources to spend time with our children." And it's a tough commentary, but very true. It's a reality that I think our communities and our school districts need to face. Now I'm going to put on my other hat, which is the Head Start hat. I work mostly with parents of Head Start children who will be going to kindergarten in the coming fall. And it's very difficult for our parents for a number of reasons. Head Start is a pretty warm and fuzzy place, and we're willing to go the extra mile in many different directions because we don't have an entire school of children to deal with. So we have the time and the wherewithal. Head Start is 3.5 hours a day. Children are transported by bus both ways. They are fed 2 meals at school. What I have worried about ever since I began this job at Head Start, that I thought I might be able to do something about, is try to get school lunch set up for kindergartners. I worry about our kids. I worry about the low-income families and how those kids are going to get a square meal. They're fed twice at Head Start. They get nothing in kindergarten. Many families who are low income, most families, now have both parents, if they have 2 parents, who are working, but the income tends to be minimum wage. It's very difficult for them to afford quality child care. And when you can't afford quality child care, children wind up in some pretty interesting places. Sometimes with relatives who are great, sometimes with relatives or neighbors who are not so great. But it's an iffy question, and if we really care about children, we need to set things up so that they work for all families, not just those of us who can afford the child care, even though we whine about the cost. Some families actually can't afford it. So, I'm glad that this conversation is beginning, and I hope it does not take 10 years for it to go through. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Susan. Now we'll hear from Kathy Newman. She teaches full-day kindergarten now at St. Joseph's Elementary here in Missoula.
And this is our 4th year of teaching all-day kindergarten, and I was asked to talk kind of from the teacher's perspective, and I'm going to affirm some things that Shannon said more toward the end. I'm going to talk a little bit about first the half-day program. In a half-day program, in 2 to 3 hours, a teacher has to take her group of kindergartners through phonics, math, science, writing, there's library, PE, music, snack, recess, and any other extras that the school incorporates. In a half-day program, it seems that reading and math readiness consumes most of the time. It is a program where teachers, one teacher, is instructing or evaluating up to 40 children over the course of one day. The gift of time is what I see from the standpoint as an instructor in an all-day program. In our full-day program, time is given to children as well as teachers. Our curriculum is presented with time for completion. A concept can be taken and explored at greater depth. Time is there for readdressing sections that are harder to grasp. Paperwork is finished with time for teachers to verify results one-on-one. Free play. There is time in our curriculum, presented in an atmosphere that gives them, the children, time to develop their own interests in an open space to be creative. There is time to learn who our children are and address their strengths and their weaknesses. There is time to meet the children's needs. First grade is all day with more seat work expectations and a higher sense of independence. In talking with our first grade teachers, Jody Hunt and Katie Lane, they both commented that full-day kindergarten prepared the students for an easier transition to the demands, time, and social requirements of first grade. With time for guidance, this wonderful group of youngsters is learning how to be a class. They are learning socialization skills that are the foundation for their incorporation into society. My day runs from 8 to 8:30. It starts with free or open play, which includes the easel, writing center, housekeeping, blocks, computer, manipulatives, etc. Mat time follows, addressing calendar, counting, graphing. It's basically a time of large group instruction or incorporation. Math is next, where concepts are presented or reinforced. As children finish any work associated with the concept, they are directed to a structured play or play with purpose. There is the hundreds tubs, which are dice. I have dice in there where they look at probability. I have popsicle sticks, rubber banding groups of 10s. We're counting to 1,000. Those kinds of things. Play with a purpose. Puzzles, file folders, the classroom library. PE and music are on alternating days, followed by recess and a snack. During snack is another time that I use to read with them, because class loves the Magic Treehouse series. They will clamor for a chapter to be read from that book if I'm sharing from another. I then have a concept slot where time is given to phonics, letter recognition, reinforcement, with the availability to put in season activities with older peer classrooms. Science units are developed, as well as themes that are year-long in developing, such as this year we're doing music, masters, and manners. All of these can be incorporated and fully developed. Lunch recess and lunch are here. Computer is after lunch for 2 days a week. After computer, or after lunch on other days, cot time or quiet time is scheduled.
Yep.
Every child has their own cot where they rest with their snugglies and their books. I typically have children fall asleep. Generally, I let them sleep until recess at 1:30. During quiet time, there is time for me for one-on-one with a child where I will read to them, we will read together, or they will read to me. I also use this time for small group instruction. For those who are awake, after a time of 30 to 40 minutes, we will do a shared writing activity, or I will do an activity that reinforces instruction. A bit longer recess is in the afternoon, followed by another snack. And the day ends with an art activity that is again connected to concept instruction for the week, story stretchers, etc. Although our days are filled, I do not feel like I am cramming learning down my students. I feel like I have more of a chance to expand holistically their knowledge of their world. During a conference this summer, my colleague Adisu Ferris and I attended the Kindergarten Reading Academy in Helena. It was awesome. And we found that most, if not all, of the teachers who commented on our program being all day wished for chances to give not only themselves, but their children the gift of time.
Thank you, Kathy. Now we'll hear from Mike Delancey, who is a Missoula child care provider and also the president of the local association for the education of young children.
Thank you very much. I'd like to thank you for inviting me here. Child care providers don't often get into a forum like this. We're often seen as unimportant to be heard. I'd like to say I appreciate the day that you have structured for your kindergarten students. It actually sounds very much like a day at our child care. Very age appropriate, and I think it's just right down the line for the children. But like I said, it's exactly what takes place in a quality child care as well. I understand the full day kindergarten is going to happen in Montana. I think it's just a matter of time and money. It's a political and money issue, and it's going to happen here sooner or later. But I think there's a number of issues that need to be addressed by the community at large that haven't really been touched. Well, they've been touched on a little bit, but there's several of them that haven't even really been discussed here very much tonight. I have three areas of concern that I think we need to take a look at. One is, how does this impact the working families? Our child care basically takes care of people who are working 2, sometimes 3 jobs in a household, and they need a quality place where they can take their children and they know that they're taken care of. More than that, they know that they're actually being given the skills they need in all the domains, social, emotional, cognitive, their physical domains, so that they're prepared for success in school and in all of life. From NAYC, we know that there are a number of studies going back 60, even 70 years that have told us, and recent brain studies on brain development have really solidified some of these points. What is important for children takes place actually before they get to kindergarten. It starts in the cradle up to the kindergarten age. If they're going to have success, we have to start at the very beginning, giving them the foundation of the skills they need. I understand the financial push for this. I went on the website for the Missoula County Public School System just to see. Now, I have a master's degree, but it's not in economics. So trying to sort through their budget really kind of befuddled me somewhat. But as I read it, it looks like for the K-5 in Missoula County, we're looking at 3,298 K-5 students in the 2003 and 4 school year, and a $23,543,000 budget, which breaks out to $7,138 per student for the 9 months. Actually, it's about 8 months. I'll tell you about that in a minute. Now, if all the kindergarten students currently were moved from half day to full day, it does mean a savings to the schools. It means they are going to save some money on the things that have already been touched on. It also means that there's some more money coming into the school system too, if I read their budget right, from the half day to the full day. So there's some money things pushing this. But I think the decision makers need to look at some of these other issues. In our child care, for example, we have 9 families that have to be worked by 7 or 7:30. We have another 18 families that have to be to work by 8 o'clock. None of the schools that we service will allow children to be on their grounds before 8 o'clock. So what are families supposed to do for that hour, hour and a half before school? Also, most of our families don't get off work till 4 or 5 o'clock. Schools do not want the children on the grounds for an hour or 2 hours after school. They know that it's a prescription for trouble. And so I don't blame them. And I realize that most of our families simply don't have the job flexibility to be able to take time off for the 27 days a year that kindergarten is closed during the school year. 27 days for PIR days, for parent conferences, and for the holidays. We're talking about the winter and spring breaks. And also for the 30 days a year that they get out an hour early. So basically we're looking at 8 months of instruction for that amount of money. So I'm trying to figure out, has anyone, and I couldn't find anything on the web where anybody's talked about this, has anyone figured out what families are supposed to do with their children in the morning before school starts and in the afternoon after school is out, if they go to full day? Are they simply believing that child care providers are going to make up this difference? We can't. I don't know of anyone who can afford to fill up the slots in their child care for a couple of hours a day per child. So has anyone thought about that? I haven't heard anything. The child care provider who stays in business after this takes place, the full day kindergarten, is going to have to fill those slots with younger children. And so what's going to happen in the summertime when the families then need care full time? Where are these kids going to go? I wonder if the community is even giving thought to what's going to happen then. One Missoula school during the year went from half-day kindergarten, or 2.5 hours a day kindergarten, to kindergarten full day Monday, Wednesday, and half a day on Fridays. The 5-year-old we had in our child care for 6 hours a day, 5 days a week, is now a latchkey kid. He goes home on the bus and waits till his mom gets home around 4:30. What if the community has thought about how many children we're actually going to turn into latchkey kids when we go to a full day kindergarten? How many families are actually going to be able to arrange to get off work in time to pick up their kids or find some other place for them to go? When we go to full-time kindergarten, I know it's going to happen. We have other consequences that's going to cost our community money. So kids having all that extra time in their hands, especially 5-year-olds running around with other kids that are latchkey kids, it's a problem that needs to be addressed now before we go to full-day kindergarten. Now there are after-school programs in Missoula, and we used to encourage our parents to check into them because we thought it would be good for them and for the kids. But we've had most of our parents, after checking into them or having their kids in the programs, have actually come back and begged us to pick up their kids after school. And why was that? Because it was a large number of children up to 10 or 11 years old, very little supervision, and so the kids are picking up bad language. Sometimes they were really getting physically hassled, and it was just inappropriate and it wasn't safe. So I wonder if the community has thought of some ways that we can come up with programs and to take care of these children where they can be monitored. Can we monitor the program to make sure it is safe and age appropriate for these children, for these ages? We have a lot of quality child care in Missoula, and I know that if you were to, I don't know the exact numbers, like I said, the numbers kind of befuddled me on the website there, but you take 200 kids out of the child care and put them in full day kindergarten, I would say you're going to lose probably around 20 child care providers, close to it. So it's going to be an economic impact on our community as well. Full day kindergarten is going to happen, but I'm not in favor of it until we address these issues and some others that I don't have time to discuss. But thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you, Mike, very much. Next is Roger White, who does childcare in Great Falls.
Yes. Well, Mike, you're absolutely right, but we're looking at it down the road about 3 years. The Great Falls School District decided to go to all-day kindergarten in the 2002-2003 term. I'm going to talk a little bit about the impact that it has on child care itself in Great Falls. And you got to understand that it's fairly negative financially. I want to talk about that for a moment. And then I want to talk to you about the positive aspects of full-day kindergarten in Great Falls as you look at it from full-day kindergarten teachers. Now, I spent the last 2 weeks, a couple of hours with each of 3 kindergarten teachers, And I got their perspective from a where the rubber meets the road kind of mindset. Remember, too, that some of this is being driven, the need for more education at an earlier age is being driven by No Child Left Behind. Now, it's not, I'm not going to talk about negatively or positively about No Child Left Behind. Most everyone probably has an opinion, both positive and negative, about that already. It's here. Generally, I think there's a lot more positive to it than there is negative to it, because of the need for us to compete on a global scale. Now, you can head off into the political world there. I don't want to do that. I want to stay with where the rubber meets the road. My wife and I own a medium-sized, what I'll call a quality child care. Now, quality is a key word because it's measurable now. That was not the case 5 years ago. There are inherent measurable things that we do today that was not done 5 years ago, clearly 20 years ago in the child care world. So if you, although there hasn't been an awful lot of advertising about it, if you listen carefully, local advertising will talk about the Star 1 and Star 2 facilities, or the rating with an R and an L, which is registered and licensed facility. Those are significant. They're not flawless, but they are an awful good marker for determining child care. It'll continue to improve, and we're going to see that. Again, our facility is a medium-sized facility. We have about 90 children capacity. We have not met our capacity. I took a few statistics from our local resource and referral facility, which is called Family Connections in Great Falls. I asked them in 2002 how many centers, actually programs they call them, were in Cascade County. And there was approximately just under 300. Today, 2 years later, there are about 218. Now that means centers, in-homes, the whole facility group. So we lost quite a number of them. You say, well, I'll throw my hand up and say, I know why that is. We went to all-day kindergarten. That's not exactly right, but some of it is true. Some of the centers that we had, just if you'll just buy my non-scientific idea of this, if you take children who are from 0 to 5, and you group them in 0, 1, 2, 3, from 4 to 5 group, there's 5 groups there. If you were to remove the 5-year-old classroom, in other words, all-day kindergarten means generally there are no slots generally filled for that 5-year-old. The 5-year-olds are all now in all-day kindergarten. And by the way, Great Falls, you're absolutely right. There was only 2. The note that I saw was it started with 41 or 45 people opting out of all-day kindergarten, going to half day, or finding there are parochial schools in Great Falls as well. I'm sure there's some here that have elected to stay where they are. But over a very short period of time, they opted almost 100% to go to all-day kindergarten. It's an economic issue for parents, right? It's an economic issue partially. Now that sounds harsh, but if you've got to make the decision about whether you're able to pay the rent or whether you're able to pay Roger and Tammy an incredible large amount of money, percentage to the amount of money, percent-wise, if you'll accept that, to the amount of money that they make per month, it's a staggering amount of money. Now, I always say we're nowhere near get enough money for what it is that we do, so we can sustain this quality marching. But on the other hand, we've got to make it so that it's still affordable, and we can't. Child care is expensive. What happens is to parents, when I talk to kindergarten teachers, they look at their pressure comes from the school districts, and their focus is on more and more testing of aptitude of children. That's driven largely by No Child Left Behind. Again, that's good. That's mostly good, although a lot of people think that that's not necessarily good. the argument behind all of that is, if that's the case, if we're going to educate our children, the kindergarten teachers all, just as Kathy, I think it was Kathy, was talking about, absolutely, it's like I'm talking to the other 3 kindergarten teachers in Great Falls. They're absolutely right. Essentially what it amounts is gives them more time to be able to prepare those children for first grade. So the idea behind all of that is being pretty well endorsed in Great Falls. For childcare, we are not full in our center. We expanded. Unluckily, we had from 2001, we had a waiting list of about 40 children. We have a capacity of 50. And I'm going to get a little bit kind of small business on you, if you'll allow that for a few moments. We had a capacity of 40 children. We ran with about 30 or 40 waiting list. We knew we were doing the right things. We had this absolutely focused balance between socialization of children and the academic part of the child. And we dovetailed ourselves right directly into the Office of Public Instruction and particularly the school district requirements for entrance into kindergarten. We knew we were dead on, and we were able to market that very, very clearly. We had our own little niche, and everyone else followed suit. Not everyone, but the majority understood that. I'm talking about our competition. And we had this very good thing going. We expanded, we spent it. What I think to be an incredible amount of money to expand from 50 children to 90 children. I opened the doors for the last 40 children on September 1st of 2002, and guess what? You're absolutely right. What you're thinking is exactly right. They went to full-day kindergarten. We lost 28 children September 1st. Now, not did I gain, but I lost. So financially it hurt us. We've seen other for-profit centers go out of business there in Great Falls. There have been 3, and these are centers now. It's not in-homes. Not that I'm saying in-homes are not significant. They very much are. And if you look at the statistics to show that we are now at around 218 instead of just under 300, some of that I'm really sure is because of the idea of full-day kindergarten. Mike talks about before and after school care. We tried that. You can imagine that half-day kindergarten, we provided transportation to children to actually every elementary school in Great Falls. There are 15. And we literally, the children would come to our facility at 7:30 or quarter after 7 or approximately that. We would feed them breakfast. They had the same teacher. We put them on our little shuttle bus, and we would run them strategically to each elementary school. We would then go back about noon. We would collect them up, bring them back to our center. We would feed them lunch. We would collect up the children who were in the afternoon program and bus them to the afternoon programs. And at 3:15 approximately, we would collect them and bring them back. That's about 3 hours or 2 3/4 hours for a half-day kindergarten program. Most parents would say, and I use the argument that the majority of the time the children are with us. Clearly we're providing breakfast and we're providing lunch and we're providing an afternoon snack, whichever other end that your child is in. So we're providing that as well. But I had to charge a full day rate to do that. They said that was an okay thing to do. We were full. When school district went to full day kindergarten, I could no longer make the argument that I was going to require an all-day rate, which is the way that we balance our revenue budget, so that I know that I can pay for the teachers that stay with me and guarantee them a 40-hour work week. Understand, stability is what creates an awful lot of quality, right? So that's what I required. That worked okay for a short period of time because these parents were very loyal to us. But after they realized that instead of spending $22 per day for childcare, they could spend $3.15 an hour for the before and after school programs that were provided at the local elementary schools, it wasn't very long, and we saw that loyalty kind of diminish. You know what? You remember I said when I talk about it, it's the money, it's the finances. That's exactly what happened, and I don't blame them. If I were a parent, and I have been twice, I'd do exactly the same thing because it made good economic sense. There are some problems inherent with the before and after school program. Well, let me back up just a second. We decided then to go to a before and after school program. We went to a lower rate. Remember, we still had the buses we had to pay for. We had the children that we were driving, that we were moving, or transporting rather. We had to have people to drive those buses. We also had to have people still in our facility taking care of the children who were not required to bus. So there's an added expense. You have the liability, you have the cost of running the buses. All of that is a huge expense. I charged about $15 per day for that couple hours in the morning and a couple hours in the afternoon when Mom came to get them at 5:15. That didn't set very well. It was too expensive because, again, they could pay a lot less money, didn't have to worry about the transportation costs. And at the before and after school programs that are provided by, it sounds like I'm beating up the elementary schools in the school district. I'm really not. This is the real dollar figure and how this thing has kind of migrated through where we are today. So, but the bottom line to the whole thing is that it was very short period of time, and even at $15, the parents decided that it didn't make economic sense to be able to do that. So that was last year. This year we elected not to provide before and after school care at all, because it just simply, all we were is busy. We just ran the children, ran them back, ran the children, ran them back. That's all we were doing. We had cooks, you just stir in this big pot, and you had X dollars coming in and X minus $2 coming back, going right back, or plus 2 going back out. We were losing money. So it didn't work. It didn't work for us.
You're going to go to the wrap-up now.
Okay, thank you. I didn't see the notes. I didn't see I'm busy talking over here. So the bottom line was that it didn't work very well for us. Financially, it's a disaster for child care. All right. In my short little kind of tunnel vision focus of the world, it was not a very good thing. Now, we're still struggling. We're recognized as one of the highest quality centers in Great Falls. That's not me, that's people saying that. Yet we're struggling, which means other people clearly are struggling. That's the negative side of how the impact that it has on child care. Child care is a very significant, I'm almost done, really am. Child care is a very significant part of the academic and social growth of a child. It starts at 0 and passes on through when we hand off to kindergarten. We want to be involved in that part of it, very much so. We want to be part of the group rather than be the complaining exit part of this thing. So that's where I want to talk, what I want to talk about. I want you to get the idea that isn't the end of the world, although you are going to see people go out of business because this happens. But the larger picture of all of this is that full-day kindergarten really does help the children and helps them prepare both to enter kindergarten, and for the kindergarten teachers, first, second graders, teachers, to accomplish what they need to in order to accomplish No Child Left Behind. Thank you guys very much.
And Karen Allen, the cleanup batter.
And that's exactly. I don't know much about baseball, but I thought I was the cleanup hitter, and that's a good place to be. And it's just wonderful to get to hear all of the insights of all those who have come before me. As was said, I'm the principal at Lewis and Clark. Before that, I was a middle school principal. Before that, I was an early childhood person. I've taught kindergarten. I've developed curriculum in kindergarten. In fact, I've developed curriculum for preschool. In fact, I have had the wonderful pleasure of working with the kindergarten teachers in Missoula. And the kindergarten teachers in Missoula are an absolutely wonderful bunch of educators. And they have been talking for a long time about diversity and meeting kids where they are, and that whole thing about the readiness of the system. I did have to laugh, though, Ann, when we were talking about how the spectrum of kids who are 5. When I was a middle school principal, I learned that 7th graders, that's where the broadest diversity is between a 4th grader and a 12th grader. And I was struck by the thought that we don't tell them to stop school until they get their act together. So maybe that wouldn't be what we wanted to say to 5-year-olds either. The wonderful thing about Missoula is that this conversation started at least 3 years ago, right, Susan? And there is a group, including child care providers and early care providers and school folks who have been part of a conversation about what's good about early childhood development in Missoula. Also, at the state level, there's been a setting of early childhood standards, and most of you probably know that, but the state of Montana has already talked about what kids, and we're not talking about a test here, we're talking about what kids ought to know and be able to do when they're 3 and 4 and 5, and what those, what anybody who is their caregiver, whether it's their mom, their dad, a home-based program, a center-based program, what kinds of experiences and opportunities kids should have. So Montana's been talking about this whole process for a long time. The question now becomes how can we best do this? I think the one thing that's going to happen in Missoula, and I always love it when we can learn from Great Falls, because they like to tell us.
Yes, I do.
We're not you personally. We're going to get to have a little more conversation about how full-day kindergarten gets implemented in Missoula, and I think it will involve all of the players. Now, will we make everybody happy? No. Not everybody will be happy all of the time. But as a school person, I sure would love to have on-site care starting at 7 o'clock. I don't know that we're going to be able to make that happen, but I know that happens in other parts of the country. I have to tell you kind of a story about Lewis and Clark. Over the years that I've been there, we've had several conversations. At one point, we didn't have after-school care at Lewis and Clark at all because the community didn't really think they needed it. Now we have after-school care and it's full. We didn't used to have breakfast because the community didn't think it needed it. Now we have breakfast and we feed at least 100 kids a day. A few years ago at Lewis and Clark, and partially because I'm an early childhood person, I started thinking, these little kids come for 2 hours and 15 minutes a day out of probably almost a 12-hour day for many kids. It's hard to figure out what 2.5 hours I'm supposed to pay attention to when I'm only 5.5 years old. And so we talked at Lewis and Clark about the possibility of an all-day kindergarten modeled after some other northwestern states like Washington where parents can pay for the other half. Now, one of the things I was looking at was in Title I schools, they were having extended day kindergarten. Lewis and Clark's not a Title I school. How can we provide the same kind of thing? Well, we went all the way up to OPI and got a ruling that said essentially the Montana Constitution won't allow us to do that because in Montana, it's a free appropriate education, which is right, and you can't charge in Montana for education. Well, actually, in our hearts, we think that's the right thing, but it was why we couldn't do a full-day kindergarten at Lewis and Clark. I think ultimately, to agree with what's been said before, it's going to come along. I think ultimately it will be a benefit for kids. The one thing I wanted to talk about a little bit, I think we have to be careful not to shoot the messenger, which is the assessment, but we have to listen to the message. And there are a lot of kids in school today that really do not have the background knowledge necessary to build to the 21st century to be economically feasible. And there are kids for whom there is not the background knowledge. There is not the vocabulary. There is not the math understanding in terms of just manipulating things. Things that maybe most of us learned at our mother's knee. There is clearly data that was reported earlier that says for kids of lower socioeconomic background, full-day kindergarten makes a real difference. I think that we're going to find over time that there are kids who don't necessarily have a lower socioeconomic background, but they have a hectic life. and their moms and dads have a very hectic life, and they're missing out on pieces of development also, so that the more we can help make a rich developmental opportunity for all kids, the better. So what are some of the things we're going to have to think about in Missoula? First of all, and I do not speak for the school board, but I can bet you a dollar to donuts that without money from the state, it's not going to happen in Missoula. So if we want it to happen, then the legislature is the place that we have to talk to. And we need to talk about how this is not a utopian idea. We've had a lot of reasons in Montana for probably why we are coming to it later than some other places. However, I think we're coming to it honestly at this point. The opportunity to support early learning is an important need. So, yeah, we've got to have some money. But then we need to develop a community conversation. And that community conversation, and I think it's for the school district to certainly be a key player in that community conversation, it's very important, but to involve a lot of folks. Child care providers, teachers, parents, community members who don't necessarily have children in school. And I think we need to think about how we're going to put these things into place. There has to be planning with the classroom, with the teachers that we've talked about. I've mentioned that our kindergarten teachers are, I would put them up against any in the world, bar none. However, to move to a full-day program means that we change how we look at what we do. We change the pacing, we change our thinking. So we would need to do some work there. We would need to do some work with transition from early care providers to school. We would need to do some work with the whole first and second grade teachers. The thing I think that people who don't spend time in elementary schools right now may not be as aware of is school is not the lockstep place that we went to. Kids are not all treated the same in first grade, in second grade. And so I think we're better prepared maybe for this implementation because some of the things we've been thinking about for quite a long time. We're starting some assessments in kindergarten that we haven't done before, looking at trying to see if we can pick out even earlier kids who might have difficulty later on. Because we don't want to do one size fits all. We want to be sure that kids who are ready to read when they come to kindergarten get to do that, and kids who aren't and who need some more sound symbol development, some speech and language development, that they get that too. And so we're working on better assessments, not just assessments that try to show that we don't know how to do something. Right now, if we waved our magic wand and it happened, we're going to have a space problem in Missoula County Public Schools. So we would have to think about this. However, when things are good, we can pretty well find what we need. So I certainly don't suggest that Missoula County Public Schools can't find the space. It's just we have to rethink things. I think that's part of this. We have to maybe rethink our relationships with all the different players in the community too. Because if it's the right thing for kids, it's what we all ought to be doing. And I really appreciated your point to say, okay, there's some problems, but there's some positives too, and we need to be able to address those. Also, we need to be looking at what happens for these same kids that you were talking about in the summertime. Certainly, holidays are another one. We have a parent at Lewis and Clark who is just would love to have us think year-round school. Other parts of the country have done that, and year-round school deals with some of these issues as we're talking. But I think the point that I would like you to hear from Missoula County Public Schools is that we realize that there's a lot of planning that would need to go into our being ready, but we're clearly interested in having the opportunity to do the planning, and we believe we've got the talent to make it work as well as anybody, and we'll get up to Great Falls standards.
You want to take that dagger out of my back?
I meant that as a positive.
I know you did.
You guys have taken the boulders out of the road, and now we get to follow.
Thank you so much, Karen. I think the first thing we should do is really show some appreciation to Susan and this panel. What a great diversity of opinion, and I really feel like it's just covered so much territory. So Thank you for that. And now we get to the fun part, which is really to have a conversation with those of you that came to listen tonight and hear and learn. And I'm going to open it up in a pretty broad way. I guess you are limited to 5 minutes. So that's a nice long time. The one thing I want to know before we start is there or isn't there legislation in this session for full-day kindergarten?
Yes, there is.
There is.
My office has legislation.
Good. Okay, the race is on. Go ahead.
My name is Tammy Wright, and I own Educare Preschool in Great Falls. The problem that you have, or that we have, is that when you have a full-day kindergarten, you are also going to lose people. When you lose people, they employ people. So a number of people will have to look for other jobs. As we all know, Montana is not very well appointed for jobs. So the problem is our ratios are different than schools. Our children at 5 are 10 children to 1 teacher. So we have a lot more one-on-one time with our children. We have a lot more time to dedicate to them. Teachers are 20-something to 1. We, in early childhood, know that children take a lot of time. So you're going to have to address that situation. The other thing is that economically, if we do not employ these people, they have children also. We're creating another problem. These are things we need to think about. The other thing that I want to mention is, I know that it'll go through because it will. That is where child care providers now have to think of different ways to make money in their centers to keep the people they have and to employ them. Do not put your head in the sand, because it's going to happen. So you're going to have to come up with better ideas and better understanding of what you can do, and maybe diversify and do what you can. That's what I have to say.
Responses?
I'm thinking that a
Let
place.
me do one thing. Can I ask our MCAT guys to close that back door? We're getting a lot of blowback or something. Go ahead, Karen.
And I don't know how to do this, but there ought to be better ways of collaboration between the public and the private sector, and I don't know how to do it. I don't know if anybody's done it anywhere, but it seems to me there's enough to go around, enough need to go around, and that I just would hope that we can think about how to do it differently so that there is more inclusion and not the exclusion that I hear. Each of the situations has value and need. I don't know if we have any in Montana, but in bigger cities, they have 24-hour childcare places. Those are obviously necessary for people. You know, if I were a nurse working 11 to 7, where would my children be? So as a community, these are questions, I think, that need to be addressed, and maybe we can solve some of the problems that you're talking about that the full-day kindergarten created in a bigger view. I don't know, but I think that's part of what the community conversation has to be about. And you're bringing those problems up directly is really important, because we have to think of those. I wouldn't think of all those things.
Go ahead, Roger.
Yeah, I'd like to respond to just that as well, too. Linda McCullough and I were on a board, and I don't know if it's still active or not. I think it is. School Readiness Board with Governor Judy Martz. Now, obviously, there's a new governor in place, and we want to kind of wiggle our way in there so we can get some attention there too. But what I want to tell you, and it addresses exactly this issue of where private sector and public sector shake hands. And for the first time, early childhood and Office of Public Instruction are sitting at the same table talking about the very issue of the cohesiveness of 0 to 5 or childcare, preschool, pre-K, whatever words you want to put in there. And that's a big gamut. That's not just one phrase. That's everything. And this readiness for kindergarten. And so I think, Linda, you may want to comment about that, but I see that as being the beginning of this sort of handshake between the private and public sector with a legitimacy to the early childhood part and the elementary education part. Am I right?
I think you're very right, and this was an interesting conversation that actually started maybe 2 or 3 years ago when I was first talking about full-day kindergarten, and was fortunate enough to be able to go to some meetings with child care providers, and I think that was valuable to me because I don't go into the idea of full-time, full-day kindergarten without realizing that there are some concerns from community child care providers. On the state level, I can have conversations, Roger and I can get together in our panels, and we can offer up suggestions, but frankly, I think the strength that we have in Montana is that, we are different. Missoula looks different than Rowell, Montana, and so solutions may not be the same in both. And so, while it's true, and we often say we're a local control state, we are often frequently able to solve our problems on a very local basis too, and differ from one community to the next. And so, I think that's the importance of starting, this conversation here. And obviously, we have a lot to learn from Great Falls, who has been 3 years into this situation. And so, we would be foolish not as a state, but also as individual communities, to not learn from Great Falls and there are a number of other communities that have full day option kindergarten.
Any other responses on the childcare stuff? Other things, the other areas. Rob?
I had 2 things I wanted to bring up to Mr. Delancey and Mr. Wright. Is there a difference in your business model between a full-day kindergartner and a first grader who needs after-school and before-school care? As in, can those full-day kids be wrapped up into that kind of a program, or is there some fall-off where we just can't reach those guys for some reason? The other question I wanted to put to Ms. Allen, if you would talk a little bit more about the space constraints that Missoula would have to address were the magic wand to wave this thing to happen.
Well, I guess I can start. When our slots are filled, or we're licensed for a certain number, we're not able to take first graders for the summer or during vacations and so forth. It's only when we had some spaces open, like during Christmas holidays or whatever, and a parent contacts us, their child used to go there or something, that we were able to accommodate them. So as far as is there a difference, yeah, there is. If they're in school full day, it's probably difficult, if not impossible, for them sometimes to find care unless they're really looking for it ahead of time.
But if I'm a parent of a first grader, I can't find somebody who can get my kid at 7 o'clock and pick him up at 3.
I think it'd be very difficult to. I think it would. I'm not saying it's impossible, but I think it'd be very difficult. Simply because, like I say, we're licensed for a certain number. If I take your child for an hour in the morning, an hour in the afternoon, I can't take another child in that space. So you're paid for 2 hours a day, and that space is taken. How do I pay my staff? The staff that has to be there. It just doesn't work unless you got somebody to make it work.
There's no magic. He's dead on. And although I may not have made it absolutely clear, what happens is we went through the growth of all of that, or the evolution of all of that, where we started with half day, and you had the majority of the time the child was in child care, not in half day kindergarten. And so that allowed and made sense to the parents that an all-day rate, and understand it's the stability of the money that comes to child care center or to any company, the stability of the money that determines the amount of money that you can afford to pay our teachers. And it's that creates the stability. They're going to want. It's more easy for them to realize they can learn to become more well-educated. That's the stabilizing factor in all of that. So when that changed, when you go to all-day kindergarten, you have a couple hours in the morning, a couple hours in the afternoon, that I can't charge enough money, and from a parent's point of view, they're not willing to pay that kind of money. It doesn't make sense for them to do that. And so we wind up with filling that slot, if you'll allow the term slot. There's only so many slots available, and we're limited by the state government for those slots. I'm not complaining about that. That's done for quality. The bottom line is that the smaller the ratio to teacher to child ratio, generally the more face time there is with the child. That's a good thing. So I don't want to get the wrong impression. We want to jack the slots up to compare with anything else. But to answer your question, by the time that a child is in full-day kindergarten, and then clearly in the first grade, they've pretty much outgrown our facility in Great Falls. We start at 2, we don't start at 0, although there are a number of facilities who start at 0 and go to 5. We're licensed from 2 to 12, but very seldom do we ever see any children staying with us past the age of 5. Now, during summer months, we have this implosion, or this huge group of children that come at us. We're not prepared for that because we can't hire teachers who are only going to work for us for 3 months out of the year, right? That doesn't fit very well. So we wind up struggling or bouncing around some kind of idea to bring a teacher who's not working in the summer maybe, or I don't have an answer for that one during the summer months. It's a struggle. And to answer your question, I've kind of went around the wrong loop there, but maybe it's a clearer loop. That's what happens when you have all-day kindergarten from a child care point of view, operator's point of view.
Karen, do you want to address the space question?
I think what's probably, first of all, there's going to be some choice, as I understand it, and I would imagine that would be how Missoula would react too. So I think, first of all, we don't exactly know what our facility need will be. Second of all, we're just, every year we look at how our facilities are being used, and we just, principals just filled that form out again. We have had, as you're all probably very aware, declining enrollment. There was a time when at Lewis and Clark on the second floor, there were 4 full classrooms that actually weren't being used at all. And as the evolution and the closing of schools has happened, we don't have those now. But we do have a family resource center in our school. We have classrooms that are used for other things. It's going to have to be a conversation about how we modify things. And I think then we have to be creative. For example, a long time ago, and I didn't live here then, I think in Missoula, kindergartners all went to one place. Was that before you guys? They all went to Lincoln or something. And there are some principals who might think that's a good model, and I'm sure that's a model that some places are using, where you have like a kindergarten site. It could be that not all schools would be handled in the same way. Now, I want everybody to understand I'm doing nothing but making this up. I am thinking out loud about how, as a community, we might say, how could we solve our problems? And so I could envision the possibility that not all communities, neighborhoods in Missoula would solve it in exactly the same way. We're all trying to learn to do more with less. So, I think that's how we do it. But I do believe that each community, as it comes to be supportive of the concept, then would work hard to reorganize and rearrange. I'll tell you myself, a couple of weeks ago, I sat down and said, okay, if this was coming, what might we do? So I think we're all thinking about it.
Mm-hmm. Susan?
Well, I understand your need for a stable job, and it's difficult to find in Montana. And I think you do have to be creative. Because I won't go into that. But one of your problems, as you say, is you only have so many slots. And if you're doing before and after school care, you have to deal with the transportation. And I think one of the ways you could be creative with, and this would have to be the partnership with the schools, is if the schools gave you space before school and after school. And that way, if you had well-trained people for the appropriate ages, you wouldn't have to move them. Of course, their problem would be they'd be on a split shift. In Missoula, we of course have students who are always looking for jobs, and perhaps in Great Falls too. So I think there are some ways to look at it, but it would mean, at least for you, not for a startup person, giving up the comfort of being in your own space all the time.
We have a project and it's called HANDS, and it's not ours. It's another entity in itself, and it's a before and after school program. So they pretty much have that sewn up in Great Falls.
Mhm.
They do work out of the schools. That's exactly where they are. They also have the Boys and Girls Club. The Boys and Girls Club is a good thing, but their ratio is extremely high. We just hired one of their staff, and there were times where she was taking care of 68-1.
Yeah, that's what
So, and I'm not exactly sure what the HANDS program has either, what their ratio is. But ours is very low. It is 10-1.
You know, childcare is such a issue unto itself in some ways, and clearly it's related to this topic, but quality childcare is a problem in this country. It's expensive.
If you do it correctly.
If you do it correctly,
bet
it's
is.
expensive to administer. And in Montana, there's recently been a study of childcare. It was commissioned by the Department of Public Health and Human Services in the Early Childhood Service Bureau. And they have some interesting findings, one of which is there's actually more kids that need childcare than are currently receiving it. Now those, meaning there's more kids than slots available. But those kids that need the slots cannot pay the rate, those families can't pay the rate that it would take to use up those slots. So this is a really complicated problem, because I'm really sensitive to the issues of childcare providers on multiple levels. But on the other hand, according to this report, if you're a family that has 2 children needing childcare, you spend between 25 and 37% of your family's income. Okay, compare that to the fact that this is in Montana, compare that to the fact that 61% of Montanans spend only 35% of their income on housing. So this issue around childcare, where I'm really worried about the welfare of good childcares, because they're hard to find. Good childcares are hard to find. We don't want those providers to go away. On the other hand, the economics of it also impacts the families, and we know more kids need quality childcare than is even available, but the state subsidy reimbursement rate isn't such that you could provide quality childcare on that. So I think this issue of quality care for young kids, whether or not it's in kindergarten or whether it's in childcare, is just really important for the state, and probably beyond the panel, but it's an important issue that we need to think about.
Well, like so many issues, everything's connected to everything, and it has really come up here. I want to make sure that we go a little bit beyond childcare as we take questions too, so let's, why don't you go ahead in the back.
I'd just like to make a few comments about a parent's perspective in all of this. Last year I had a kindergartner. That was the worst year in my entire life. I'm not kidding. I mean, I love my son's kindergarten year. My son's kindergarten teacher is sitting next to me. I mean, I loved it. But the fact is that I had to find care for him in the morning. I had to take him to school. I had to pick him up 2 hours later. I couldn't put the baby down for a nap because I had to drive back to the school 2 hours later. Then I had to, it was just busing, transporting him here and there, and it was just a big mess. This year, I'm having a problem again. They were saying, what about first graders? I have a first grade son. I could not find childcare for my son for 30 minutes in the morning before he had to get on the bus and 30 minutes before I got home. I could not find it in Missoula. I called everywhere. It's not available. My son has to go to neighbors and friends and family in the morning. He has his own key to the house. Yes, he does. Some days he has to let himself in the house. Most days Grandma is there to let him in, but some days he has to. I have no other choice. I don't.
One of the parents' comments from the survey, and I hope you look at them, is she said, "I would have voted no to the idea of full-day kindergarten until my child was in kindergarten last year."
That's exactly
Yeah.
But I also have the viewpoint of this year I'm still teaching in a kindergarten classroom, and I also have the viewpoint of I cannot get everything into these little guys that I have to in 2.5 hours. I can't do it. I can't teach everything I need to. I feel like, oh gosh, they're not learning the math they need to. They're not learning the phonics they need to. I don't have enough time. I can't do it. And that time, like Kathy said, that time needs to be there. They're not going to learn the skills they need to go into first grade if they don't have that extra time. I am spending the entire day just teach. Okay, next subject. Okay, here we go. Teach. You know, and you can't do that to them. They need full-day kindergarten.
Another comment in the front? Thank you very much.
Well, mine was kind of on a similar vein, but I just want to say how appreciative I am to everyone here. What a really fantastic panel. This has been so much information. And I want to especially voice my support for making the decision on those of you who have made the comment about making it a decision on what's optimum for the child at that age. And I, have to say, I was most deeply touched by Susan, your presentation, because the kindergarten years, as you just related, are so close. I remember how extremely difficult it is. When you become a parent, you want to do everything you can. Your life changes, and the first thing, fundamental thing, I think for me, having a modest income, fortunately we have a 2-income household, but was to achieve home ownership, because believing that that's critical, for stability and for the future for your child. So once you do that, it becomes essential that both parents are working full time. There's no way to achieve home ownership in a place like Missoula if you're not, I don't know how anybody can do it on a single income. And so then comes the child care, and then I remember spending over $5,000 a year thinking, my gosh, it's a college education fee when my child is 3 years old. And what just how difficult it is for people to find the right decision. I mean, I really am a strong supporter of public education, and my son's kindergarten teacher is here, and I am so grateful to the quality of the school district, and the results that were achieved from kindergarten. But I do remember it is burned, into my memory that year, and I think, ultimately one of the most difficult things, and not only was it, of course, stressful for me, and I was lucky enough to have a job where I gave up, as one of my coworkers know, I had to leave my job every day, gave up lunch to go and transport my child from half-day kindergarten, from one half-day to another, and how guilty sometimes you feel. And my child was eating lunch sometimes in the car in between, and I truly believe at that age that nutrition is also fundamental. So what is the right thing to do for your child, but I do also think that from the child's perspective, the most difficult thing for him that he had to deal with at that age were the transitions. And we struggled with that. Everybody does the art project right before ending, and my son loved art, and how hard it was to tear him away from the art project that he started to move on to the next transition. So I just think that having the child in one quality public education kindergarten that is all day is optimal for the child. And I do believe in the creativity of the business community. I believe there are a few that have already started up. I know I located one for my son after school, on site, in school, after school program, so that he doesn't have to go through another transition until I can get out of work. I know there's not a plethora yet, but I believe if it's really put out there to the business community, and if, as you say, the schools are open to a partnership with the business community, we need to bring them on site. And I just want to thank all these presenters for this great panel tonight.
Thank you. Good. Any responses up here to any of those comments?
I agree with her completely. We are great back here as well.
If I could just put in a motivating factor for me, and I've already released the secret. I had Pakistani teachers yesterday who kept wanting to know my secret, so I don't know that I have any, but a secret is that I'm an elementary school librarian. And research for years and years and years has told us that children who can't read at the third grade level, by the time they finish third grade, because you start, fourth grade becomes very different. You have a lot more subjects and a lot different sort of emphasis. But by the time they finish third grade, if they can't read at the third grade level, it's very difficult, very, very expensive to ever catch them up to reading at grade level. If they don't read at grade level, they can't do math, social studies, science. That's a huge factor in dropping out of school. And we also know that low-income children, American Indian children, come to school with about 20% of the language skills that other students come to school with. So there's a group of children who right from the get-go, are needing extra help, and we know that by that hurdle at the end of third grade, if they haven't made that, it's sort of a perpetuating thing. So frankly, all we can do at the early end, I think, is to the betterment of our children, making sure that they actually have the skills they're going to need for the rest of their lives. And Susan, I think you had some things too.
Well, I don't know if it's germane. I was just going to tell you what parents told us about why they wish they'd had full-day kindergarten. I'm just going to use the numbers from Washington Middle School. There were about 220 parents with about 170 plus saying, gee, I wish I'd had full-day kindergarten at the time. The number one reason they wished they had it out of these 170 people, so 111 said, kindergarten's short hours made my job, my responsibilities more difficult. The next highest thing, my child could have learned more. The next highest thing, my job or responsibilities made it difficult to transport my child at midday. And then we go down to 88 people. My child actually spent less time per day in kindergarten than she had spent in preschool the previous year. Followed by, I have more than one child, and their different school hours made it more difficult to coordinate their needs with my job and responsibilities. Actually, the daycare thing falls below that, the cost of daycare. So there's a lot of things going on here with parents.
When you think about the developmental perspective, too, of changes, we know that there's this concept called continuity of care. And so for young kids, we know that having relationships with a primary or single caregiver promotes development. And so when you think about marking kids' days up to more pieces, then you have a little more discontinuity. Also, in terms of transition time, young kids spend between 20 and 35% of their time in transitions. That means moving from activity to activity. That's non-instructional time, that's non-learning time, it's transitional time. And anything that we can do to decrease that time is good not only for learning, but those transition times are when you see are most likely to see those inappropriate behaviors. And so anything we can help to keep kids doing the right thing instead
I thought
of...
that's what M&Ms were for.
I'll give you another
Nutrition.
another parental quote on that is that I don't think daily shuffling has a good effect on kids, inconvenience aside. It just adds one more busy activity to the already overactive lives they see us live and have to learn to live themselves.
Go ahead.
I wanted to respond to what I heard Linda say, that the sooner we can get kids started learning, the better it is for kids, and I totally agree with that. I just want to put in my own 2 cents that I hope we don't make all-day kindergarten look like younger first grade. And I think there's a real danger of that. I think
that
we
would
really
not be
have
my
to
intention.
remember what. No, I'm not saying that it was your intention.
We're on TV, I want to be sure.
But I am saying, also on TV for the record, I guess, that I hope that everyone involved with this will be very careful about that, because I think it's easy to think that if we can get the early readers in their hands in kindergarten, they're going to be reading better. And I'm not sure that I think, actually I am sure that I think that's not true. We need richer language experiences that are appropriate for 5-year-olds. They need to be playing with blocks. They need to be learning that when a block moves around and they pretend it's a car, it's the same as later learning that CAR represents a car. We need dramatic play representation. We don't need a little first grade.
I don't disagree with anything you said.
And I'm glad you brought that up, because I lived in those days. In the 1980s, we did that. I think there was really, I mean, I was a kindergarten person then, there really was a pushing down. You know, if it's good for 12th graders, we'll move it to 11th, and 11th to 10th, and da-da-da-da. And so what we saw was 5-year-olds sitting at desks with pencils. And I think it's really, I don't feel that there's anybody in this audience that would think that, but it's important that we go out and tell the rest of the world that that's not what we're talking about at all. And that, and in fact, because we're so far away from it, we don't even remember. But that concern that you're expressing is like what people would think. Oh, well, now they're going to have to sit with the workbook, like I remember doing. Well, first of all, we don't have very many workbooks in the world anymore. But second of all, that isn't what we're talking about. We need to be really clear. So I appreciate you bringing that up.
Thanks, Karen. I want to make sure that we get on the record what is the legislative process? You know, who's introducing, when is it happening, and how do people get involved that are interested in this in any way?
We submitted actually, because there's a monetary figure with full-day kindergarten, so we had to submit our proposal in April to the governor's office. And then, of course, that was not a proposal that went into the governor's budget. As an elected official with an agency, I still get to put in bills, even though they don't go into the governor's budget. So we still have the budget proposal. We have a bill. Kathleen Galvin Halcrow, Representative Galvin Halcrow out of Great Falls, will be carrying the full-day kindergarten bill. I think I know many faces in the room, and many of you, I think, have worked with legislative things before, but things move rather quickly, and so, getting on the sites and paying attention to, what bills are coming up. Remember, my agency, we can't do any lobbying. We don't do any of that, so, I would say keep in touch with any of your associations, education associations, in making sure that they know that you're interested in certain bills, but actually following right on the laws site, which I don't have on the top of my head. But
if you go to montanastate.gov, you can
and then go to the legislature, the 2005 legislature, and every day the new bills that come up, and then it'll track the bills and tell you when the hearings are in the committee. It'll tell you when it comes to the floors of the House or the Senate, and following it that way is the best. And frankly, I would invite all of you, child care providers, educators, other folks here, to come when the bill comes before the legislature. It will start in the House side because Representative Galvin Halcrow is in the House. And so come and testify and give us your experience and your benefit of knowledge on all the issues with it.
The best time to give that, excuse me, while I just
No,
jump
please.
right in there. The best time to give that testimony, then after first reading, that bill will be assigned to a committee, and then they'll have a hearing, a committee hearing. That's the best time to give your information. That information is posted in the on the website as well as in the newspaper, and you can find out when that bill. If you don't know the number ahead of time, you can find out on the website what helps. I'm sorry.
I'm saying, checking. It's LC 399, which means it's not a bill yet because
It's not been introduced
legislators
yet.
aren't there yet, so it can't be a bill. So it's LC 399, and we have a legislator right here. You don't have to wait. You don't have to wait till the bill is introduced and it comes to the committee. You can talk to your legislators about your wishes about this bill, any bill, at any time before that. In fact, they're not quite so harried now as they will be come January 3rd. So it gets worse. It gets worse. And so, at any time. And so, we would encourage you to talk to them now, talk to them later. But things do move rather quickly, and often there's not a lot of time for, real advance notice of when a bill is going to come up for hearing. And the wonderful thing in Montana, and I have visited some other legislatures just because I was curious about this when I was a legislator, is that in Montana everybody comes and everybody's welcome to come and testify. You know, we have other states where the only folks you see testifying are those paid lobbyists and the people in the suits and the attorneys and all that. And in Montana everybody comes, and frankly that's to the benefit of our legislature and our process, that everybody can come and give their opinion, and we listen to that.
If this goes along, I'm asking, being a little devil's advocate, and got funded, would it take away from some other educational options in Montana? How would the money come about?
That would not be our intent. In fact, that's the reason that I did not introduce the bill 2 years ago, because with the budget deficit that we had then, I was afraid that, first of all, that it wouldn't get the attention it should get because people were just worried to death about the deficit and so on. And so I wanted it to get the attention it deserves to get, and to have the conversation it deserves to have. And so, you know, frankly, we shouldn't look at any new thing in education as being something we can take out of somewhere else. I mean, the whole idea of full-day kindergarten is for the better education of our children. To take away somewhere else would make no sense at all. And so, you know, basically, we're starting the conversation here.
Well, that's good. Well, this has just been a fabulous. Did you have one more comment?
I
Please
just
go,
wanted to
Shannon.
say one more thing, and I just wanted to address what you were saying. I'm a special education teacher, and I teach children in an early intervention program, ages 3 through 5, and we serve children with and without disabilities. And I think a lot of the pressure that I feel for teaching children academic skills, I often receive from parents. Parents are coming to me and asking me, this happens frequently, when are you going to teach my child to read? When are you going to start focusing on the letter of the week? When? And it's something that I really have to establish very on. This is my philosophy. This is how I believe children learn. And I think it is to the benefit of children and to my responsibility that I feel to the children that I pass along into kindergarten to inform parents of what is developmentally appropriate at that age and what to expect in kindergarten. Yeah, some children in kindergarten are going to be reading, and any good kindergarten teacher is going to support your child in the best way that they can. However, this is how children move along, and this is how they develop, and this is what we see happening. So I think it's the responsibility of individuals like myself who work in those types of settings to really educate parents on what is appropriate. And obviously you're a parent who knows and feels strongly about what I also feel is strongly inappropriate for children.
I've also been a teacher,
Yeah. So it's really interesting that I think oftentimes Nickleby was brought up, the pressure's there, but a lot of the pressures that I feel come directly from families.
And I think this is an optimum time, as we talk about full-day kindergarten, to talk to parents about what that means, and that it doesn't mean
Exactly.
more worksheets, more reading books.
Yep.
And not just this is how children learn, but this is actually how playing with blocks is helping your child learn
Exactly.
to read.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That's what parents need to know. When I taught preschool, parents could hear that. But I didn't know that till I went to school and learned it myself.
Yep, and they have to see it in action and know that it's working. Yeah.
Well, what an interesting topic. I want to thank again. Okay, Roger, but
I promise you, I won't be there long.
Okay.
I always like to talk about the phrase that's I didn't invent. I wish I did, and it is, if you think education is expensive, try ignorance. Right? Okay. The other thing that I wanted to touch very quickly on is half-day kindergarten in Great Falls. There was a kind of a workshop kind of thing that people come up with brainstorming ideas. One of the ways they did it was to have a single location because there was a few, and they would bring the half-day children to one location. There were some inherent problems with that one too, because consistency, as she's talked about, was a problem, because you're pulling a child out of a facility they're familiar with and bringing into a facility that they're not familiar with, and the transportation costs, all the rest of that. Those were just a couple of things that I wanted to throw out. So,
Thank you. Thanks for that. It was a good note to end it on as well.
thank you.
So thanks again to our panelists. Susan, congratulations. This is just fabulous that you're getting this going with the Healthy Start Council. So we all appreciate your efforts there.
Yes, very much.
Thank you.
Even though we're off camera, there's a lady in the back row's been trying to talk for 15 minutes.
Oh, I am so sorry. Did you want it?
You know, we can go on.
Yes, I just wanted to make sure that.
Very last comment about the separation of play and academics. It should not be, and we should be addressing that, because it's not two separate activities, that when you play, you're not doing any academics.
Right.
And really make sure you address that every time it comes up, because it happens a lot, that play is not academics when it is.
Well, but
And the other thing about the full day program and half day program is that it's not that, because I came from another state where there was full day kindergarten, and now I'm in a half day program, and my curriculum hasn't changed. I just have 3 hours instead of 6 hours to do it. And so that's where my program has become a lot more, almost like 100% teacher driven, because I've got so much, there's no child left behind. I'm going to say crap. To really, you know, this is my student teacher, you know, put down their little throats that people are saying. And if I had a full day program, I could let them breathe, you know? And I feel like I can't let them breathe, and they're only 5. And so if they could actually breathe, and they'd have a lot more time to learn. And then the first grade teachers who are feeling so much stress, my kids would go up to them with more skills, so they wouldn't be so stressed, and they could let the kids have that academic play in first grade too. Because as soon as they hit that first grade door, they're yanking the blocks out of the classroom. And they don't need to, and they shouldn't. The best job interview I went to was a 4th grade teaching position where they still had blocks in the classroom in 4th grade. I was dying for that job. You know, it's the best thing, and I don't think any of us are really, whether it's childcare provider or kindergarten person, we still want to think of the kids, and so to be very careful not to bicker amongst ourselves, because really it's about the whole American culture that money is making decisions about our lives instead of us making decisions about our lives. And we should be addressing things like the minimum wage, which doesn't afford us anything, and legislators and politicians in corporate America that does nothing to put money into education, and kind of focus and get political in that way, because really our ideas are about the kids. We're not that different among each other. Even though, you know, we have different ideas, the bottom line is the kids. And what it really comes down to is we're all really upset that money is driving decisions instead of the kids driving the decisions.
Right.
And that's really who should be, is
Thank
the kids
you.
and the families. I mean, give them an opportunity to be a parent. Because a lot of my parents want to be parents, but they don't have time.
Can I ask you a question? Susan? Well, first off, I do have my early childhood certification, and I taught preschool for 8 years at UCC. For 8 years. Before I wanted to find out what I was getting them ready for, and I'm kind of doing this backwards. I'm going upwards instead of. But did you ever find out? You asked the question about.
You can ask
Linda. Well, early childhood certification. Like I said, I am early childhood.
Special competency.
Yeah.
That's good. I should be asking him. Yeah. What other than the fact that for me, I'm certified. I have my certification from the University of Texas, but to be certified here, I have to go to Bozeman. Bozeman at one point in time, anyway, was the only place that had early childhood. Not anymore.
No, there's a
Okay.
program at Western, and it's online. But since we're on this
It's online,
topic,
extension.
I'll give a commercial. I was recently awarded, I and my colleagues at Child Care Plus, Susan Harper Whalen and Sandra Morris, were recently awarded a federal grant for $1.2 million, which will be used exclusively, and almost all the money goes to students. We're going to be able to train 32 students who will come out of the university with a degree in early childhood special ed, and a master's degree if they come and depending on what they come in with, it's very complicated because the way we do certification in the state. If you come in with already an early elementary certificate, then you can get an endorsement in special education, which in this state is K-12. But the coursework you'll be taking is in early childhood special education. So I am definitely, if that didn't make sense, I'll give you more information later. But I'm definitely excited about that because what we're trying to do is supersede, the requirements in the state, which are minimal for early childhood special ed. And we're trying to give you the competencies that NAEYC and DEC think you need to have to work with young children. So we're interested in working with people who have come out of and have a degree in early childhood ed, even if they don't have a certification. We still can't recommend them for licensure because of the way the state works, but they can get a master's degree with that coursework. If they have licensure, they can get an endorsement and be qualified for the special permissive competency. So it's very complicated, but it's a great thing for the state in terms of being able to take advantage of some master's degree coursework in early childhood. So that's all I have to say.
Is it early childhood?
Email me.
Okay. Is it early